Okay, today I'm going to talk about Screentime. This is one of my absolute favorite parental control apps. It is the app that got all of this started. I started looking for an app that would allow me to turn my boys' phones into basically an alarm clock radio at bedtime. My reasoning for this was a couple of things. One was we had just brought a newborn baby home from the hospital, and our current rule was that the phones would come to our room at night and the boys would turn them in and we would plug them in, and sometimes we would forget to plug them in, and then there would be an argument over why their phone wasn't charged for the next day. And sometimes we would plug them in and then we would get all kinds of crazy alarms or notifications or text messages that would come in at ungodly hours of the night. And even though they did have do not disturb features, sometimes those features were turned off. We'd forget to turn them back on, turn them off because of a long weekend or whatever reason. They wouldn't be turned on. And so because of that, I wanted to release control of the devices at night and not have to mess with that. We had the newborn baby and we didn't need anything else waking us up at night. In addition, I wanted to kind of give them more control over getting up in the morning and waking themselves up. And while we did have access to regular alarm clock radios, sometimes it would be forgotten to switch that alarm on at night, and the next morning we would sleep in or oversleep. And so by letting them have their devices, they have the most convenient way to set an alarm, have it preset so that it goes off every Monday at the same time, every Tuesday at the same time, and so on and so forth, just like adults can. And but at the same time, I didn't want to give them access to being up texting all night long or watching videos all night long or playing their games all night long. So I went looking for this app, and what I landed on was an app called Screentime. It's a cross-platform app, and that's really important to me because I have an iPhone and my boys have Android devices. And this app allows me to set time limits, so I can choose to set 2 hours a day or however many hours a day of screen time, or no hours a day. If there's a specific day of the week that we want to limit screen time, we can do that. I can assign homework and tasks or other things in the app to allow them to earn extra screen time if I want to do that. I also can set schedules that automatically come on. So we have a bedtime scheduler on that automatically comes on at night, and I have gone into that schedule and set certain apps that are allowed. So this is what really lets me turn it into an alarm clock radio. I have only the clock app and their music app available to them when bedtime comes on, and it automatically blocks newly downloaded apps. So every day or any day if they download a new app, it automatically blocks that in the bedtime scheduler so that only their clock and their music is available when it becomes bedtime. And 30 minutes later it becomes lights out, and then even those two apps aren't available to them anymore. I also love the instant pause feature in Screentime. I use this a lot, especially when we are trying to get their attention, call them down for dinner, if they don't want, if they're not compliant at that time, or we're in church, and I often have my phone on and sitting on the Screentime screen just sitting next to me, and I can glance down when I notice that one of my kiddos maybe isn't focusing, because they sit with the youth and we sit where we sit, and I can often notice that maybe they're not paying as much attention as I'd like, and I can look in Screentime and just real quick see what they're doing. It tells me right there what app is open on their phone, and sometimes it's the Bible app, and that's great, but sometimes it's a game, or sometimes it's Snapchat, or we're texting with friends, and at those times I can use the instant pause feature and just block access to their device as a whole until I'm ready to unpause it. Also, there's a free play feature, which on the vice versa, on the converse, allows me to unblock during a normally blocked time. So for instance, we recently had fall break, and bedtime's a little bit later during fall break, but I didn't want to go in and adjust my whole bedtime timer. So at bedtime, I just went in and hit free play real quick and gave them another hour of free play on their devices so that I didn't have to change the timer or the regularly scheduled scheduled bedtime, but I could just turn on free play and allow them to have a little bit of extra time on those nights. In addition to that, I can approve apps. I can have it set where it automatically blocks newly downloaded apps until I go and look at them. It does notify me when my kids download an app so I can quickly go in and approve them, or vice versa. I can allow them, and I do try to trust them to make good choices, but then I can see what apps they download, and if it's one that I don't approve of, I will just go in and block it. And there are certain apps, you know, in the app stores that we've talked about that they're not allowed to have, and when they're not allowed to have one and they download it anyway, I just go in and I can block that, and then we can talk about consequences later. In addition to all of that, I can see app usage, so I can go backwards throughout the day, throughout the week, and see what apps they're using the most, how many minutes they're using them, and I can actually see when they were on what app. So if I'm curious about what was going on at a certain time of day, I can check that out. I also see a web history in this device, or I'm sorry, in this app. I don't have filtering capabilities, so this app does not filter for me, but it does let me see what they're doing on the internet. So it's been really a pretty awesome app. It is not free, but it's pretty cheap, so you can go out to their website and check out the pricing. But you guys, I have a baby at home, and she's 9 months old, and she wakes me up when she wants to wake me up. I don't need their devices waking me up. I am just trying to stay sane, y'all.